Nickelodeon. I think you all know the story with them. Basically everyone under the sun says the same thing with them, that they were one of the first of the big three to push for creator-driven cartoons, leading to Doug, Rugrats, and Ren and Stimpy. Insert massive tangent on why the network's garbage here now. I think it's all pretty obvious that Nick has had a lot of quality, as well as a lot of, let's just say, interesting material to work with. But something I found really eye-opening is for the most part their back catalog had a willingness to experiment. It just so happened that a lot of these shows would end up dying out as soon as they got on the airwaves. I think you all know what I'm talking about. Your Harvey Beaks, Making Fiends, and Mighty Bees. These were all shows that had great promise, but either by how the channel was run at the time, or the always present SpongeBob standard, they ended up fading away and dying out. Thankfully, a lot of these seem to have gotten cult followings of their own, and are remembered fondly by many. But the one I want to bring some attention to is one that I believe really could have made a great name for itself at the time, that being El Tigre.
Manuel Pablo Guterres O'Brien Q Rivera. What is going on here?
Created by Jorge R. Gutierrez and premiering on March 3, 2007, El Tigre was a show that, from my point of view, attempted to give off a feel not seen in many shows at the time. It was a story of the week superhero comedy that gave its all when it came to its jokes and animation, but also tried its level best to stick to its themes of honor, truth, and family. In a time where shows like Avatar were already underway, and others like Danny Phantom were nearing their ends, this seemed like a series that was a shoo-in to join the rest of the lineup, but didn't. So, like always, I want to look into that. What aspects of it made it unique? What moves did it pull to make the small name it has for itself among fans? Well, let's find out. But I don't want to do this alone. It's time to call in a favor. Hey Siri, call in collab guest number 80085. Ah, Tim. You know, after all the times you asked me to be on stuff, I thought I'd finally ask you...
Geek?
Wait, you're not Tim.
Yeah, no shit, I'm not Tim. Wait, is this where you've been for like the last 4 months? I haven't seen you since November. But hey, I like what you've done with the place. Looks pretty good.
Yeah, I've been kinda busy. Wait, if you're here, then where's Tim?
Yo, who the fuck is that?
Huh. Well, since you're here, you wanna make this a collab?
Listen, I'm not one to judge, but I kinda am. But are you asking me to talk about this show made by Hispanics because I'm Hispanic?
Yes.
Okay, sure, yeah, I'll go get my stuff. Or whatever, yeah, I'll talk about this fucking show, why not?
So join us as we talk about El Tigre, the highs, the lows, and the giant personality in between. This is El Tigre, the Nicktoon that should have been.
I want to rule the world as much as the next guy, but not if I gotta dump my family.
El Tigre is a series that people can easily describe as very formulaic in a way, with every episode having a structure that follows as such. Manny wants a specific thing in that episode, whether physically or morally. He gets swayed into doing that specific thing immediately, becoming worse in a way. Manny does the right thing and apologizes for it. End episode. This might make the show look really repetitive for some, but that's not the highlight for it. Much like the shows that aired with a similar sort of vibe as El Tigre, like let's say Powerpuff Girls, the charm doesn't come from its story development and deep characters, but from each episode trying something different with its various bad guys and situations our heroes go through, which do act as a companion piece with the mission of the show, that being to help Manny decide between becoming a hero like his dad or villain like his grandpa, and I think it does this really well.
I think an aspect that often gets overlooked when talking about the show is its opening. Not only is the theme really catchy and exciting, but tells you practically everything you need to know about the show and its world. And the town the show takes place in, Miracle City, specifically takes inspiration from Tijuana, the city of Mexico that Jorge R. Gutierrez grew up in. Throughout each episode of the show, we get to see a lot of internal struggles that our protagonists get into. May they're learning he wants to become a superhero like his dad or a supervillain like his grandpappy. There's a specific episode that does an incredible job showcasing this duality, but we'll get to that when the time arrives. But even when the show doesn't touch upon these themes, a lot of the episodes are just fast-paced and really fun to sit through.
That being said, there is only one issue I have with a lot of the show's episodes, that being pacing. It can go from easily viewable to everything going a million miles per minute, and while I do find myself really loving the show, this took a lot of getting used to as someone who was watching for the first time. If there's anything this series actually excels in, it's design, utilizing Adobe Flash for its run. A tool which a lot of people criticize, but El Tigre is one of those examples of it being used well. The movement's fluid as hell, the characters all have very vibrant color palettes, thick outlines, and mismatched proportions. Not to mention, everyone has one crazy thick accent, acting as a melting pot of design that gives the show a unique feel and look.
God, I absolutely adore the art style this show has. It's really unique compared to other shows back then, and even shows now. There's really nothing like it. I think that's all thanks to the incredible art direction from Jorge Gutierrez. What I find even more fascinating that he does keep this same sort of art style within every project he directs, but all to make it stand out from one another, but practically evolves the art style as time goes on. I also love the amount of detail and love given to Mexican culture in the show, despite what other critics will say. And all that love was shown within the visuals and the soundtrack as well, which consists of only bangers and absolutely no misses.
But a show is a lot more than its designs and structure. The main event of El Tigre is its characters, chief among them being Manny Rivera. A good kid is caught riding the line between heroism and villainy, with his father White Pantera being his good influence and his grandfather Puma Loco being his bad one. His hot-headed nature can allow him to commit the wrong acts in most of the episodes, but seeing as how the series focuses on him differentiating right from wrong, it fits. He's still a good kid at heart, and tries to please anyone that means anything to him, and I like that in a character.
Also, she once told everyone at school you had a perm. She must pay!
Manny. What else can I say about this little shit of a superhero? Well, the fact that he's inspired by a younger version of Mr. Gutierrez. I always found the dilemma whether he'd become a superhero villain very intriguing. I also find it really funny how practically everybody knows that he's El Tigre, but nobody really respects or cares about it. I also really like that he is an pure of heart protagonist. He loves getting into trouble, and it's a great duality to his father. Speaking of which...
Well, now time to have some cocoa with tiny marshmallows, then go sleepy time, no?
As I mentioned previously, Manny's father is White Pantera, one of Miracle City's greatest and most hardest working heroes you'd find. At first you'd think the guy would be the biggest stick in the mud father that keeps a watchful eye on Manny and his antics, but in reality, he's a giant nerd who, even though being a superhero, cares more for his loved ones and will do anything for them.
Look, the theme song I wrote for you when I was 10. We're the League of Alliance Society, surrender and come along quietly.
One of the best examples of this is in the episode Yellow Pantera. Manny gets the unfortunate news that his dad chickened out of a fight with Miracle City's El Mar Verde, but doesn't get the reason why, immediately thinking his dad's a coward. The episode is a prime example of what kind of a person Rodolfo is. He wasn't afraid of losing to El Mar Verde, he was afraid of not being there for his son while he was growing up. And that's a believable thing a lot of parents go through, the sacrifices in order to be there for their children, and even support them. You know, we always like to give Dr. Doofenshmirtz his flowers for being one of the best animated fathers out there, but Rodolfo Rivera deserves some praise too. Hardworking, a little goofy, but in the end, means well and has one of the kindest hearts a guy could have. There's a reason why he's one of my favorite characters in the entire series.
White Pantera is literally the embodiment of every Hispanic parent ever, and I have no idea if I should count that as a positive for being relatable or a negative for also being relatable. He's a heroic figure who cares about his son and wants him to follow in his footsteps, but god damn, he is such a wet blanket. But at the same time, he's also a huge nerd. I also adore his design. It has a nice mix of looking like a wrestler, but at the same time looking business casual. He's a good character. Nothing else to say about him.
You know how the childrens are. When they little, they look up to you. Then one day they turn on you like a snakes.
On the opposite side of his family is Manny's grandfather, Puma Loco, one of Miracle City's greatest villains as opposed to White Pantera. Much like Rodolfo, even though he's constantly doing bad deeds in Miracle City, family is just as important to him. Puma Loco acts as the bad influence in Manny's life that constantly drives him to be more supervillain-like. Much like Rodolfo, while he can be found stealing in every episode, he does care for his son and grandson, and on most occasions joins them in fighting off threats. He's a villain, but he still means well, and even though his ideals clash with White Pantera, he does it with Manny's best interest at heart. Just a side note, but I just love the banter between him and Rodolfo. Sure, they constantly butt heads, but you get the feeling that they are still father and son at the end of the day.
What are you doing? Fishing. For what? Roof trout?
Puma Loco is probably my favorite character in this entire show. Grandpappy Rivera is the devil in Manny's shoulder compared to his father who's the angel on his shoulder, often telling him that he's better fit to be a villain than a superhero, but at the same time I also love the fact that he doesn't take his family for granted and puts them first. He's also like the funniest character in this entire show, and come on now, his mechanical hat suit is just really cool.
This trio of family members seem to act as a trifecta of sorts. You have a kid being constantly pushed by two big influences in his life. His nerdy, well-meaning heroic father and his chaotic, villainous grandpa, all of which seem to balance each other out. But something's missing.
Oh, I know what's missing, the chaotic neutral best friend of the protagonist. And that, my dear viewer, is where Frida comes into the picture.
Can you hear me? Is my sandwich down
Accompanying Manny is his best friend, Frida Suarez. Being honest, I have no clue how to feel about how she is in the show, cause for the most part, she's the one constantly pushing Manny to make the wrong decision in most of the episodes, and even though she's there to be the support, she never really did anything to impress me outside of those moments. There are episodes where she's the focus, like La Tigresa, and don't get me wrong, she manages to carry an episode pretty well, but a majority of her appearances is just Grey Delisle doing the Grey Delisle thing. I don't know. I guess what I'm trying to say is that I see why she's here in the show, but for me as a viewer, I really don't feel anything towards this specific character.
Yeah, I have to agree with Geek in this one. Outside of their unique design and her often having funny lines here and there, there's nothing really special to say about Frida. She has no powers, but she's willing to get into shenanigans with Manny if the plot demands it, and I have to admit that seeing her dynamic with Manny is really fun, but that's really all she's got going for her, unfortunately.
El Tigre is up next. In Espanol, El Tigre al regreso. Right here on Nicktoons.
Much like its contemporaries like Danny Phantom and Powerpuff, who both had grand one-time and full-time villains, El Tigre I feel also deserves that same praise. It's full of villains that bring their fair share of personality to the show, with accents so thick it's hard to tell what they're saying sometimes. Some of them include Satana of the Dead, a skeleton lady who controls the underworld with a mystic guitar, Dr. Chipotle Sr., a mad scientist who makes monsters out of guacamole, General Chapuza, a zombie who's the leader of a gang of other zombies. But the mad villain or villains that intrigue me the most are the Flock of Fury, a trio of women who were all once in somewhat of a relationship with one of the Rivera men, with their banter being just as entertaining as our main trios.
It's like I say, the Rivera men, they always leave you. Oh.
And of course, leaving the best for last, we have the GOAT himself, Big Brut- El Oso. Yeah, I totally meant El Oso. I mean, how could you not love this guy? He's the most entertaining villain in this entire show. And he's also happens to have the saddest backstory in the show as well. I mean, my man got abandoned in a camping trip while he was a baby and got raised by bears and got rejected by a bear princess, and then he started to steal banks with his brother Osito to get enough money for the bear princess. This is some Dr. Doof type of ridiculous backstory, and I fucking love it.
But I done you a favor, man. It's favor day, man! Hey, that's a good idea, man!
No review of the show would be complete without pointing out some of the best it has to offer. I do so with every other series, and this is no different. There's two that I consider the best of the best, starting with The Grave Escape is one of these said episodes, probably the closest thing we'll ever get to a movie writing-wise. I've never seen many shows or works cover the Day of the Dead on this scale or level, and even when they do, some of them don't really do it with the best of intention, like for example, trying to trademark Dia de los Muertos. But this episode is really interesting. It paints us a picture of the Rivera men's history as heroes and villains. That El Tigre and his family aren't the first of their kind, and sure as hell won't be the last. I love the episode's depictions of the land of the dead, the designs for all the dead family members, even giving us a look into how the show could have been if it was given more time, with Manny discovering new powers. It was a real shame we never got to see these ancestors again, but I'm glad parts of this premise led away to Gutierrez's other works like Book of Life. Nothing more to say than an overall solid episode. The Good, the Bad, and the Tigre is another big one for this series. In the same way The Grave Escape is the closest thing we'll get to a movie, this is the closest thing we'll get to an actual series finale. Focusing on a tournament hosted by Satana of the Dead, Manny finds himself joining forces with a villain that I wish had more appearances, Django of the Dead. Out of every episode, this one was treated like an actual event, with Nickelodeon hosting a vote of whether Manny should become good or evil by the end of it. The villains from every episode of the series are all there, both the good and evil endings are a joy to watch, and it's just an overall blast. It's like the Powerpuff Girls rule of the show, where everyone gets a chance to shine in the end. And in the end, it personally feels like this series doesn't reach the same heights as these two episodes. These two are what are considered El Tigre's cream of the crop, its best of the best, that act as a testament to how good the show really is.
While this show may have lasted only a season, that doesn't mean that there weren't some changes. In fact, in the later half of the series, we had some changes that would affect the show going forward, some being minimal and some played a pretty big part within the show. The main one that comes to mind is that Manny's mom and Rodolfo's ex-wife, Maria Rivera, decided to come back to Miracle City to keep an eye on Manny and his antics while being the school librarian. She also has a pretty interesting backstory too, being a superhero too by the name of Plata Peligrosa, but having to go into retirement because it was driving her crazy. Years later, after marrying Rodolfo and having Manny, she witnessed Rodolfo getting hurt in battle and wanted him to stop being White Pantera, but he kept doing it until she couldn't take it anymore and left him to pursue a career in mariachi singing.
And I will once again behold the sweet goddess, without whom my life has become a pit of misery.
I think Maria was a nice change of pace for the show. Every episode she's in is really good, and she plays off the main cast pretty well, especially with Rodolfo, who still has feelings for her and tries everything to win her heart again, and while at times it is shown that she might still have feelings for him, their relationship stays a neutral one.
Hey, so I'm pretty tired, and, I've been editing this for days, so I'm just gonna have Manuel do the little outro thing. Alright, bye!
Well, I guess I'll be doing the outro for this one, so let's keep this short. Overall, I think El Tigre will forever be Nickelodeon's most unique series that never got the chance to truly shine. Are there flaws with the show? Absolutely, but it was incredible to see some genuine representation for Latin American culture at the time, where most Latino culture was either used as the setup or the punchline for a joke. And in a way, El Tigre did set up the groundwork for more shows like it. Will we see a continuation of this show? Who's to say? Jorge has been hard at working at other projects like The Book of Life back in 2014, and his most recent project being the Netflix show, Maya and the Three. And Netflix isn't really a stranger when it comes to making movies with Nickelodeon properties to end off the series, so seeing an El Tigre movie would be pretty cool. Wherever the case might be, I definitely recommend giving El Tigre a watch. It's a fun show that I recommend watching. Anyway, this has been Manuel D, and...
You're still here?
Yeah, I'm doing the ending joke I always do in my videos,
Yeah, but this isn't your video.
Yeah, well, I've been thinking, since this is the first collab we've done in, like, what, 2 years? Let's keep it going! I heard you were doing something with TMNT next, so, maybe the perfect opportunity if I got to hop in on that.
Yeah, not gonna happen. Hey, Editing Geek, can you remove this background, please?
Huh?
Now please remove manuald.png from the screen.
Wait, no, wait, let me just self-promote for that!
Much better.
Geektoons, I'm here for the El Tigre video.
Video's over, Ramen.
Come on, man. I got dressed up and everything, dude. You know what? Fuck you. I'm making my own video, man. On the show. Wherever I want.
What are you waiting for? Video's over. Go home. Play the AMV!
I want to rule the world as much as the next guy, but not if I gotta dump my family.
Fuck that. Manuel Pablo Guterres Superani Q Rivera. What is going on here?
Switch my style like I switch hands. Ah, you know how the children are. When they little, they look up to you. Then one day they turn on you like a snakes. Beats on big wheels, your father's not a challenge.
Young lady, bid you to have a crush on El Tigre. Those Rivera made our trouble.
Look, I'm cashing out.
I gotta stick around to make sure you don't get hurt.
Casket out. I hope that you fit in it.
Looks like it's gonna be a great day today to get some fresh air like a stray on a straightaway. Hey you, got a light? Nah, a Bud Light. Early in the morning, face corruption like a mud fight. Looky here, it's just the way the cookie tear. Prepare to get hurt and mangled like Kurt Angle rookie year. The rocket scientist with the pocket wireless. Some even say he might need some psychiatrist. Doom, are you pondering what I'm pondering? Yes, why would the darn thing be wandering? She's just a foundling, barely worth fondling. My posse's on Broadway like mama, I want to sing. Mad plays the bass like the race card. Villain in the place to break shards and leave a face scarred. Groovy dude, not to prove to be rude, but this stuff is like what you might put on movie food.